Okay, so I'll mention the date here. It's October 25, 2014. And just exiting the Sabbath and entering into the new moon of the 8th month. And I'll also mention that it's Davidian History Day, because that's October 25 every year. And if anyone here has a computer in front of them with the Shepherd's Rod CD-ROM, perhaps you could just type it in, History Day. I think it was also called Day of Days. I'd have to check that out. But if you type in History Day, you might be able to come across where it was first instituted sometime, I think it was in the 1940s. And Victor Houteff just set aside every October 25th as a day to review the history of the movement and so on. And I know a lot of Davidians today don't necessarily pay attention to it one way or the other, but I know that in the branch movement, they have continued to take note of it under the Rodins and so on. They, had a little gathering every October 25 where they went over the history of Davidia, and not sure if every time they did it going back to the very beginning, or if it was just kind of catching up on the most recent events. And, we'll see. I don't know exactly today what all we'll talk about and, in what detail, but it'll be good for us to review some of the history of the Davidian movement. And, of course, as branches, we believe that the branch movement is the true Davidian movement, and that the other so-called Davidian movements today are actually truly, in every sense of the word, counterfeit organizations, because they stemmed from Florence Houteff, and under their executive council, they weren't actually even executive council members or anything like that. So there was, some of that history Ben Rodin goes through to show how basically all of Davidia today, other than the branch, is based off of fraud. So when we're talking about Davidian history, it's primarily the history starting from 1929 and going up all the way through the branch history till today, although it does relate to every other Davidian movement insofar as it's connected with the branch. So before we get into any of that, and, who knows, we might discuss a little bit of, if anyone has anything in relationship to the last issue of the Silver Trumpet as well, anything like that, we can discuss that, as that's part of our very recent history. Mm-hmm. So, but before any of that, let's just pray, and then we'll begin our discussion. Heavenly Family, thank you. You are so merciful to us, and your workings throughout our history has really been incredible. And today, it is no less incredible, and in some ways even more so. So, Heavenly Family, I just want to ask that you guide our discussion here and have our eyes directed to the points of history that will be most beneficial for us at this time, and that we'll be able to learn from the mistakes of the past, and also the times where things have gone according to your will in the past, so that we'll better understand what your will is now in the present and how we are supposed to work in cooperation with you. So thank you so much, Heavenly Family. Thank you as well, Sister, for this new moon. And we all look forward to seeing whatever you have for us. Thank you so much, Father and Mother. In the name of your son and daughter, Branch, he and she. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so maybe to start, does anyone have anything to say either in relation to Davidian History Day or in relation to the last issue of the Silver Trumpet?
I have something to say. I just,
Awesome.
well, last night Mary and Ed were on, and I was telling her how much I enjoyed her testimony. And just overall, these newsletters, the Silver Trumpets, are just great. You're just doing a marvelous job on them. And so hopefully you'll have more contributions from us in the future.
That would be great.
Yeah, actually, I was talking with Mom earlier, and she asked a question, and I said, why don't you just email that to Trent, and that can be included possibly in the next issue. So.
Yeah, no, excellent. Yeah, all these things, it'll be good, since we haven't had the Silver Trumpet, and since the branch organization has been without anything like that for a long time, and even, hasn't really had anything quite like that. The branch Sabbath school lessons were, included some aspects that are similar to the Silver Trumpet and the symbolic code, in that there were some testimonies and stuff published in the branch Sabbath school lessons. But yeah, I'm definitely grateful that we have it as well. And I know this first month, I was just thinking about it, it's like, wow, here we are, the first month for it has been the 7th month, and I just thank our Heavenly Family for having us able to have as many issues, because there's the first day of the first month, the 10th day, and then the Feast of Tabernacles, and then right here, starting tonight, is actually the new moon of the 8th month, so we'll be having another one. So it's basically, on average, we're having one per week so far, because this has basically been 4 weeks, and this is the 4th issue that's being written right now. And so
I don't know how you're doing it with all the traveling and stuff, but I really look forward to getting the new one.
Yeah, I don't know how it's all being done either exactly, but
well, I've been, observing through all this, and as I can see it's just really remarkable, because I can see our sister just pouring information out of herself, and, Trent's absorbing it, and as he learns more and more, and, we won't be able to talk for several hours sometimes at a time, because he's really in a zone, and I don't want to interrupt that, which has been wonderful, because I've actually been having, for the first time in a long time, a lot of time for personal study, rather than, I've been fed a lot by doing all the editing of the WebEx meetings and so on from last year. That has been absolutely fantastic to be able to listen to those over and over and over, because in the course of editing, I have to, I hear it a lot. It's not just I listen to it and it's done and then I move on to the next one. It takes quite a bit of time for each one. And so it's been really beneficial for me. But so I'm seeing what our sister is revealing to each one of us right now, and it is absolutely amazing how much she's revealing so quickly. And it just seems to be somehow able to be put in place in a fairly timely manner. But I will say that there was 2 or 3 nights last week that it was, 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. before we were able to stop working and go to bed.
Yeah, so with this one, I just want to mention this next issue of the Silver Trumpet. There's a possibility that it'll be able to be done by tomorrow night, but I kind of doubt it. So we'll have the meeting and we'll get to blow the trumpet. It's all together here, but the actual emailing out of it and everything probably won't get to be done. But I do want to say, if anyone here, if you could write up a little thing on health, like a little health tidbit or a little, whether it's a health thing or a poem or testimonies that you guys have, whatever it is, if you could send it in tonight or tomorrow, that would be great. That would be really wonderful. So pray about that. And actually, I'll see if I can remind you guys again at the end of the meeting about that. But I just want to remind you guys to actually really take the time to stop whatever it is and to just pray about that and ask if there's anything that our Heavenly Family would have you write to send in tonight or tomorrow. But yeah, no, I'm really excited about where all this is going, and just everything together with, okay, going on this search for property and literally just driving around street by street in unorganized townships and writing all this stuff and having our Heavenly Family continually revealing things.
Well, that's what has me so excited, because they wouldn't be revealing these things for no reason.
Yeah.
And what they're revealing right now in relation to the priesthood and the antitypical meanings of these symbols is so encouraging, because it just shows that more and more people are going to be accepting that washing by the Spirit, the water, what symbolizes the Spirit, and receiving that priestly garment, and that we're being told these meanings because we're going to need to know how to perform the services. It's beautiful. I know that, yeah, we're in for good things, for sure.
And actually, I just want to mention, too, that I really do believe that our Heavenly Family starting to reveal these different sacrifices and so on, like this, revealing the sacrifices for the consecration of the priesthood is going to be opening up a lot more. And it's interesting how those sacrifices were really the first sacrifices that were done in the tabernacle. They were the first ones. And it's interesting that those are the ones that are being revealed to us in a specific manner. And one of the things that it opens up is that if you have a whole bunch of sacrifices together in one ritual, it does not, one of the things that in reading the different rituals for the sacrifices in the past, I've kind of read and kind of assumed that each individual animal represents a different identity. But the way that our Heavenly Family has revealed this shows that that's not the case, at least in all circumstances, because here you have the sin offering, the laying on, and the laying on of the hands is really showing it, because it's showing that they are choosing an animal to represent them. And so first was the animal for the purification offering. And then, now that a change had taken place, they need another animal to represent the same group of people in a successive experience for the burnt offering, and then also for the peace offering, or in that context, it was an offering for ordination, which is a type of peace offering. And so it's like, okay, it's showing that the way even that I had thought of things, or that whoever else, I'm sure that others have as well, in the past has been very incomplete, and that we just simply have not understood these things. And there's still so much that we don't understand. So I really look forward to learning. Our Heavenly Family gave all these things for a reason, and it's the system of salvation. And it should be, how Ellen White talks about how the sanctuary service should be our study. And the prophecies will open up as a result of this, and, So I'm thankful to our Heavenly Family.
Oh, it's so exciting, the times we live in.
Yeah, truly. And also, I'm really enjoying as well how, as we've been traveling, and if we have some time where we're not able to drive and I have to sit somewhere and be writing on the computer or whatever, Teresa will be reading the testimonies. And then she'll share things with me, from time to time as she comes across something particularly interesting or whatever. And so we're both benefiting from her reading the testimonies. And it's just really incredible seeing the experience of those of us or those in the past in this Advent movement and the different struggles and trials that they had to go through and, relating to some of them today and seeing how one thing that I do see is how this work that we're doing today really is in continuity with the work that Ellen White and James White were doing early on. It's really a continuity of that work. And, there's different aspects to it, and the dynamics have changed, but really it comes down to the same thing. And, it's just really incredible. So hopefully we'll all be able to learn a lot more going through these testimonies.
And I also wanted to just add that we were so thrilled to hear that, I don't know, maybe all of you have taken up reading the testimonies. I don't know. But we do know that some of you, because we've talked to some of you have started reading the testimonies, starting with Volume 1. I don't know if you're planning on just reading through all of them like I am or not, but if you are, that's even better. But we have so much that we can learn from going through those, and that's why, we're going to be continuing as a group going through them as well. But I think we'll get even more out of it if, as individuals, everyone would be reading these testimonies, ahead of time, and then we'll have more to be able to discuss, and we'll retain more because of it when we do have the meetings. The principles contained in these testimonies are absolutely invaluable for us today. I can see it more and more as I'm reading them, the major importance.
And that's actually one of the things that's so great about it, because, today, as different circumstances arise and different tests and trials come up among us branches, time and time again, what I see is the need for really understanding and living by these principles. And there are times where I have to write testimonies to individuals in a very similar manner to, what Ellen White did. And just thinking about how, wow, here I am repeating these same principles and repeating these same thoughts however many years later. And it's like, wow, if people really just read the testimonies and believed them, there wouldn't be a need for repeating that. And I know that Ellen White had to write so many more testimonies than she would have liked, for one thing, and then that she would have had to, just because of, people not really living by or accepting or understanding these different principles. And so I'm thinking, there's already so much that needs to be written, even today, on new things that Ellen White didn't write, and that Victor Houteff didn't write, and all these things, just new things that we haven't heard before. And it's like, wow, I really think that us reading through these testimonies and really taking it to heart and studying it in the light of present truth will help us to avoid a lot of trial and a lot of extra burden and workload upon myself and upon everyone else connected with this. Because, the fact of the matter is our Heavenly Family has given us a work to do, all of us, and the more we lighten each other's load, the better it will be for all of us.
And this learning and really understanding these principles contained in the testimonies will prepare us to teach the 144,000 these same principles. I mean, we have to learn them ourselves first. We have to become a wave sheath before we can, or actually I want to use this analogy. We have to learn to harp, to play those harps and be those harpers if we're going to be teaching anyone else to play the harps.
Certainly. So that's, I was just like the little conversation that started. But anyways, anyone else have anything to say? As Teresa and I are just going back and forth on this. I guess not.
Okie doke.
I have something to say.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I was reading in the pre-11th hour extra today, and Houteff says that anyone who is reading these words has received the call to be Ezekiel, to bear the message to Israel of her condition, And so I was thinking about that, and I thought, that's so interesting because we have just received the call to be priests.
Exactly. Amen. And Ezekiel was a priest as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it, and that is exactly how I understand it, is that whoever hears this message is being called. How people respond to it is their own individual choice before our Heavenly Family, but whoever hears the message is truly being called. And it is, I don't know, just thinking about it in terms of Davidian history and where we are today, it's like, man, things could have been wrapped up in the days of Victor Houteff. People had taken their call seriously. All this stuff would have been revealed so much more quickly, and it could have been wrapped up. And, here we are today, and all this stuff is being revealed so quickly, and we just have such a great opportunity. Really, such a great opportunity. It's incredible. And I just want to say how encouraged I am, not only by the fact that these things are being revealed, but I am seeing more and more people responding. And these are the things which I think that as time goes on and as the response that people are giving to this message becomes more manifested and the outcome of it becomes more prominent, we'll publish these testimonies that people have in the code, and we're in the code here. I am speaking in the language of the symbolic code. We've been reading the symbolic code too, so that's influencing my language. in the Silver Trumpet. We'll be publishing people's testimonies in there. And I am just, I just see the potential for this to really expand in terms of actual righteousness expanding, people receiving life from our Heavenly Family. And this is, well, I'll put it like this. I have a personal charge that each of you has as well. And it's recorded there in Zechariah 3 to keep our Heavenly Family's ways, to keep their charge, and to rule their house and so on. And if we do these things, we will receive places to walk among these that stand by. And, earlier on in this message, we learned about Zechariah 3 and its fulfillment in this day here. But one of the things that I don't think we talked about much is the fact that the men wondered at that stand before Joshua are actually the priests. They are the ones being consecrated into priesthood, just like it was with Aaron and his sons, And it's just looking at things today, and it's like, okay, yes, our Heavenly Family is going to be bringing forth righteousness. And looking at it as well in context of one of the things that was in the last Silver Trumpet, this whole idea of the Zadokite priesthood, the priesthood of righteousness, which is the Melchizedek priesthood. And we have such a service before us to do. And it's such a privilege to be able to be part of that service. So I don't know, in terms of the history of things, what you guys might want to discuss. We have a lot of history behind us. I don't know if you guys wanted to kind of discuss an overview of everything from the days of Victor Houteff up till today, or if you wanted to discuss more recent things, or if there's any particular aspect of things that you guys wanted to discuss. First, I'll ask, does anyone have anything in particular in their minds? And if your answer is no right now, please actually just voice yourself by saying no. And then we'll
Trent?
see. Yep.
I came on just a few minutes to maybe 5 minutes late, so I wasn't sure if Roland was on. Is Roland on?
Yes.
Yeah, he is.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure that he was. I was going to call and make sure he was okay because he's usually on, and I hadn't heard him. So just wanted to make sure. Hey, Roland.
Okay. Yeah.
So, Mom, did you have anything in mind, since you're off mute, that you wanted to discuss as far as Davidian history?
Well, I was, as he was mentioning that, I was thinking, well, that would depend on if there was any newcomers on the call that might, or fairly new, that might not know the history from the beginning. And the only one I could think of might be Carolyn right now, but it might be very helpful to hear real facts, because there's a bunch of stuff out there written that's not really factual. So that's the only thing that crossed my mind. It doesn't need to be that way, but it doesn't have to be a lot of details, but just going from the beginning, stepping stones to the present might be good for anyone listening that's not familiar.
Mhm.
Yeah, that makes sense, to just kind of, perhaps what we could do is just give a brief overall history, like you said, not really getting into details, and then that might lead us into more particular aspects. So perhaps we'll do that, and as we go, you guys feel free to, chip in and mention different aspects of this history, because, I know that some of you here are probably very well acquainted with the Davidian history and with, different things that have transpired. I know that, the Shepherd's Rod message, when it began, it was really just a small little thing in California of this Bulgarian guy, Victor Houteff, receiving more light on Isaiah chapters 54 through 66, which the Sabbath School Quarterly was covering. And, the message was supposed to be coming through the Sabbath School Quarterly, but they had failed to see the light that was really there for them. But instead, the light was given through Victor Houteff. And what he really saw was that those chapters are a letter for the church today. And really, we've seen more and more in the Davidian message that it's a whole lot more than Isaiah 54 through 66. So much of Isaiah is really directly applicable to these last days. But with that message first being considered there, things from Isaiah, it was the main thing that was being shown to Victor Houteff, right there from Isaiah 54, is that there's going to be a purified church in these last days. And he was seeing it all the way through, and he's seen, okay, well, hey, the 144,000 are really the ones being spoken of in a lot of these prophecies, and it's not just them, but there's also a great multitude. So it's, really was expanding on this whole thing, which was supposed to be an emphasis from the beginning of Adventism in terms of the 144,000, but it had kind of been lost, and, just going from there, writing Shepherd's Rod Volume 1 and giving it to the men at the General Conference in 1930. Which, by the way, there are still actually, there's at least one of those original manuscripts which still exists at some Adventist library somewhere. I've seen a picture of it, but, some of it's been preserved. And in reading the symbolic codes, I remember one thing that Teresa and I read recently was how one of the conference men, in replying to the rod, basically said, hey, if there's going to be new light coming, we know that it'll come through the people of the conference. It'll come through the conference leaders. And I was just thinking of how really blind that is, how people in the days of Christ thought, well, if there's anything new that we should learn, it should come through, the recognized teachers. But then look at Christ. He wasn't a recognized teacher, and he came with all these miraculous truths. And so, the rod movement from the very beginning has been kind of viewed as, insignificant and, not really intelligent, and kind of despised, and, kind of just offshoot fringe type stuff, And when you actually look at the content of the rod message, though, it's like, wow, how come more people don't believe this? You see Islam and some of these other religions, and it's like, yeah, they require some strict reforms and so on to some extent, and there's so many people who, believe that Islam is the true faith, and yet there's so few Davidians, or even comparing Davidia to Messianic Judaism and stuff like that. But that's just the way things work, I guess, right? It's just things are the devil has made a warfare against this so that there are very few who are willing to even consider it. So that's been the humble beginnings of the Davidian movement. But even then, there were some, like E.T. Wilson, coming into this from a leadership position in the Adventist church, and then he was just quickly cast aside as well. And I know there's more particular aspects of the history of some of these individuals, and one thing I want to mention is that at some point, perhaps during this winter, one of the things that we're going to start to do is go through the symbolic codes and the other rod literature as well as the branch literature and make, a new edition of every piece of literature that will, be more up to date. It'll have current contact information. And of course, this will be after we have
contact information.
Yeah, after we have contact information. So after we have a website and an address and maybe even a phone number, we'll be able to publish these. And we're going to be including footnotes as well as appendix notes with historical information and theological information on basically, any point within the literature that seems like it might need some sort of comment. And so things like, the first mention of E.T. Wilson in the Rod literature is in the very first issue of the Symbolic Code. So there's an appendix note giving information on who E.T. Wilson was and his contributions to the Davidian movement and kind of the history of what took place with him. So, really right now is Davidian History Day, and we are getting an overview of things, and we might talk about some of the specifics, but I just wanted to mention that now so that you'll know to look for it when these different issues are published, because it will be very informative, a lot more informative than you would have just by reading the regular publications. And that'll really help with understanding the Davidian history and the branch history. There's also in this first issue, there's an extensive note that we're doing on M.J. Bingham. And there's a lot of history on M.J. Bingham, a lot of which Davidians don't know. And so I know that Davidians are going to really enjoy reading these as well. So I guess it'll be the NET of Rod literature or something like that, seeing that it will have all these footnotes and everything. And, of course, I just want to mention, too, that there will be a lot of footnotes on theological things as well. Like if Victor Houteff mentions something about feast days or something like that, there will be a footnote, or most likely something like that will be an appendix note showing what Victor Houteff had to say about the feast days and keeping them in antitype, and how it was not yet revealed in his day that, how we are supposed to do these things, and explaining a little bit of the revelation of it through the branch message. And it'll help any Davidian who reads the Rod literature from our publications to see how the branch message is the natural continuation of the Rod message. So that'll be good. But kind of continuing on with this Davidian history, as you guys know, at first, Davidians weren't called Davidians. They just believed the Shepherd's Rod message, and they inherited or borrowed is a better way of putting it, borrowed the name from the message. So they were known as Shepherd's Rod Seventh-day Adventists. And Davidian church, or the Shepherd's Rod Church, or organization, whatever you want to call it, was actually first organized in 1934, just before going to Mount Carmel Center. And so it took 5 years from the beginning of the message till it was, till we have the first mention of its organization anyways. And that's in the symbolic codes as well. I don't remember the specific number, but there's an issue that goes through and shows the organization of it and how it's, a worldwide movement that is, the structure of an executive council and president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and all these different things. And so they, began to be as organized as possible. I mean, at first, it's hard to have, you can still be organized, but it just doesn't look as organized because it's more lax with less people involved. But the more people involved, the more necessity there is for greater organization. And you can see the development of that in the Davidian movement. And just want to relate that to today a little bit, how, we're coming to the place here where we are going to be needing better organization. Now that we are going to have a location to have headquarters at, we'll be able to have an address and all these other things, and we'll hopefully soon, hopefully this winter, I'll be able to actually do it, write up an application for membership in the organization, and we'll be able to issue membership cards, and once we get a logo sorted out, we'll be able to have new tithe receipts and all that sort of thing, which we still have some that Doug had, so we'll be able to send it to you guys even now. But
basically following the same procedure that Victor Houteff used in the days of the Davidian movement back then, where he had very extensive membership applications, and that's how it was kept orderly, and they had the membership cards, and they had to be reissued each year and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So, the Davidian organization has, as far as membership goes, there are, in the Adventist church, you become a member and then you just simply remain a member. It's like lifetime membership. In the Rod movement, it was never like that. And it was not like that for a particular reason. And that was to emphasize the fact that being a member of the Davidian organization is conditional. And someone has to meet certain standards in order to be a member. And, it's a high calling to be a Davidian. And truly, it is an even higher calling to be a branch. It really is. And, just reading, I have a copy of the membership application that Victor Houteff had for people to get membership in the Davidian organization. And in reading it, it's just very evident that most people would not want to fill it out because it's asking for a lot of information. Now, there were some sections that Victor Houteff said, it's not mandatory to fill out this section in order to become a member, but it's here for your benefit. If you want us to be able to help you as much as possible, please do fill it out. If you don't want to have all the benefits of being a member of this organization, then don't fill this out. But you can still have membership by filling out all these other sections. So it's, but again, bringing it back to today, we have, there's a very high standard that we are called to. And we are called to be fully persuaded of present truth. And it's coming to the point where it's going to be important for us to be as organized as possible for multiple reasons. One reason is just so that, here we are, an unincorporated organization. And an unincorporated organization can operate in any way, really. But you have to be able to prove what you're doing if anyone ever comes in, whether from government or whatever, and says, hey, what are you guys doing? How do you prove that this is who you are and what you're doing? And especially when you have, sale of books and, cash flow going on, you have to be able to really show everything. So having a high standard of organization is very important. And, before we left BC, I took the time to write up a number of documents concerning the organization and giving an updated statement as to what this organization is and how it is to be functioning in Canada and the rest of the world, but as, having Canada as its base for now, and, just a number of other things on more specific points. And it's going to be very important to have things very, very clear and very well organized. Also, for the fact of having it clear who stands for the truth and who does not. In Ellen White's day, there were people who professed the Advent faith and professed belief in the spirit of prophecy and different things like that, but who were working contrary to its goals and its purposes. And Ellen White talked about how important it was to distinguish publicly between, who is part of the truth and who is not, And so it's important for us to, we need to be able to have workers, we need to be able to have a school for teaching people to become full-time workers. And we, all these different things. And a lot of this, it just requires organization. Having a property, especially a large one, requires upkeep, and everything has to be done decently and in order. Cleanliness is next to godliness, in every way, both in terms of just literal cleanliness and in terms of just having things cleanly and clearly delineated and laid out, So organization in the Advent movement was a big issue because a lot of people coming out of Babylon thought, well, maybe we shouldn't organize at all. Maybe we shouldn't have any type of organization, just have it really open. And Ellen White was very clearly showing, no, order is heaven's first law, and it's so important to be organized. Now, that's not the same as being incorporated and different aspects relating to that, but having organization, doing things orderly, all of that is so very important. And the Rod movement was very much emphasizing that. And unfortunately today, Davidian organizations do not live up to that standard. But at Mount Carmel Center, it was a place of high order. And it took a while to get there because there was just so much to do. But once everything got settled and everything was happening as it should have been, they knew how many beans were left in a jar. Like, they literally counted the beans in a jar and kept a record of everything. Like, everything was very, very ordered and structured and strict.
That may sound pretty fanatical. to people, you know?
Yeah.
And I can totally understand that, but
it was to teach a principle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's times when if we have to unlearn a habit or, you know, retrain ourselves to do things in different ways, we have to be especially strict with whatever the situation is, whether it's a person who's, you know, who's addicted to alcohol and they have to be helped with detoxing from that, or someone who's addicted to smoking, or someone who's just in the habit of doing this or doing that they shouldn't be doing. In order to retrain those habits, you have to go to some extreme sometimes, don't you?
Yeah, sometimes you do. For instance, I'll give an example of myself and music. There was a time where I basically just had to totally put music to the side and not really play music, not really listen to music, not really, you know, have much to do with music at all. It had to become very distant from me for a while, because I needed to be able to step back from it, and so that I could approach it again from a different perspective, and approach it only just wanting to know, okay, what does our Heavenly Family want in relation to this in my life? And, you know, that's something that most people wouldn't necessarily have to do, but for me, perhaps it was necessary, you know? So music is a good thing, but I needed to not have as much of it in my life for a while. Or, you know, for some people, particular foods. If someone eats too much of a particular food, sometimes they can start to become allergic to it, and then they have to abstain from it for a while, and then later they can slowly incorporate it into their diet again and ingest more of a temperate way. And so
it makes me think of the phrase also being faithful in the little things, so that we can be faithful in the big things.
Definitely.
And counting beans is certainly
a little thing. Yeah. So, I mean, all these things are designed to teach us lessons. And I'll give you another example. There was a time when Victor Houteff asked people to write an interpretation of a certain poem and to send it into the symbolic code. And there, you know, that was published in the code for every Davidian to read. And when people sent it in, they were supposed to have their interpretation written out in such a way that on the left side of the page, it was a certain, you know, the words that they wrote were a certain distance from the edge of the page. And on the right side of the page, there was a certain distance from the edge of the page. And all these things, like very particular formatting and very particular folding, and the way you put it, you know, you had to have it in the envelope, and you had to have the envelope marked in the correct way, and it was just very, very specific. You had to do it in this particular way. And that was sent out to all Davidians, and they were all supposed to do it. And very, very few even sent in an interpretation. Very, very few. And I forget now, I'll have to go check, but out of those that were sent in, there was either only one, or I think there was two, maximum three, but I think it was just either one or two that were even able to be considered. And, you know, and the one that had the interpretation which expressed the greatest understanding would be placed in the symbolic code. It would be published in it. And basically, if it came and the envelope wasn't marked correctly, they wouldn't even consider it. If it came and they opened it up and the person did not have their whatever they wrote as their interpretation, the right amount of space from the edge of the page and the different formatting on the paper itself, it could not be considered. It was automatically disqualified. And I remember Victor Houteff, he wrote, when they finally published the one that was the best, he wrote how it was a test for all Davidians and how they dramatically failed it.
It was a test to see who could just follow instructions, right?
Exactly. It was a test to see, okay, who can follow instructions, and it was also to see how well people understand the message. And, you know, most people, I'm sure, didn't send it in because they thought, oh, well, why, you know, I probably don't have to do that.
Well, that doesn't mean me, or I'm not good enough. My poem won't be very good, so why bother?
Yeah, stuff like that. Or when it came to those who didn't format it properly, they probably, oh, well, why does that matter? Like, why should that matter if it's formatted in that way or not? Like, talk about nitpicky, right?
Yeah, I don't have time to go to all that trouble.
Yeah, you know, but what it did was it revealed what was in their hearts. They thought that their own way was better, or they thought that the thing which had been instructed for them wasn't necessary for them to do. And, you know, this is actually, I'm glad we're talking about this. This is a very fitting thing for Davidian History Day, because it's a little bit of Davidian history that isn't really focused on, but there's such a valuable lesson there. And bringing it to the present day, you know, this Silver Trumpet, if you guys think back to the first issue, we're told how important it is. And Ellen White talks about it, where she even said that when the Silver Trumpet was blown in the days of ancient Israel, those who did not obey its instructions with exactness were punished even with death. You know, that's as serious as Ellen White talks about it, you know. And here we are with the antitypical blowing of the Silver Trumpet, and which is even more important and more significant than the Silver Trumpet in the days of Moses. And how important is it for us to learn the instructions from our Heavenly Family and to obey it with exactness, you know? And this is something that we all need to really take seriously. And the reason why, again, truly, I'll give you an example. Teresa was telling me, I think it was yesterday, of she had to trim the hooves.
Oh, yeah.
It was Frosty, right?
This one was Sunshine.
Okay, Sunshine, one of her goats that she had. And how Sunshine was just like not wanting it to happen. So, and Teresa had to do it by herself, so she had Sunshine there between her legs. Like
I had her head between my legs, so my legs, my thighs were kind of squeezed around her neck, not so tight, of course, that it was cutting off any circulation or any air, just enough where she couldn't pull her head out.
Yeah.
But she was very naughty. And she tried and tried and tried, and she'd pull, and then she'd push, and then she'd pull, and I mean, I'm struggling, right, because by then she weighed, I don't know, 60, 70 pounds, maybe more, and she's got a lot of leverage, goats are pretty strong, and so she's pushing and she's pulling, and I'm thinking, no, because she had been developing bad habits, and she thought she could really push people and other animals around. And so I was like, I have to let her know who's in charge, because she needs her hooves trimmed. And, you know, there's just a lot of things about it. You know, when you're trying to, either with animals or children, when you're trying to train them, that you have their best interest at heart, thank you, then, you know, sometimes you have to teach them in ways that will really make a difference. So she's pushing and pulling, and she finally pulls and pulls and pulls and pulls and pulls. And, I mean, I'm holding on for dear life, and I'm thinking I'm never going to make it. But I knew I couldn't give in. So I'm holding on with my legs, holding on, and all of a sudden, Sunshine just screams, right? She just goes on and on and on, and it just wrenched my heart. I almost let go just out of sheer pity, like, oh, she sounds like, you know, she's dying. But I didn't. I just held on, and she screamed and screamed, and then she stopped screaming, and she stopped struggling, and she just stood there for the rest of the time.
Yeah. So that is a beautiful lesson of, like, okay, what these things are intended to teach us, whether it's the ancient blowing of the silver trumpets, or whether it's Victor Houteff instructing people to send in an interpretation of a poem with very specific formatting and all these very specific things, or whether it's the story of the goat, you know, really, just like Sunshine had to learn, okay, you know, I need to just stop struggling and trust Teresa and just cooperate with her because she loves me and she has my best interests at heart. And at the end, you know, that's what Sunshine had to learn. You know, that, okay, hey, now my hooves are trimmed and it's better, you know, it's actually better. This was for my benefit. And this is what we have to learn with all these things. It's not that our Heavenly Family is just like, all right, guys, you have to obey my detailed, arbitrary instructions, otherwise you're going to be getting heck, you know. It's not that. It's that they really do have our best interests at heart, and they know so much better than us. And it's important for us to be, as little children, trusting in our parents. You know, it's like with this whole garment change thing. Those of you who are parents, I'm sure have experienced trying to put clean clothes on a kid who doesn't want clean clothes. You know, kids they just don't want these clothes on, and you're trying to put the clothes on, and they're just fighting and fighting and fighting. You know, that's what our Heavenly Family experiences with us. It's really, you know, with this garment change, one of the lessons, and this will be there we'll discuss this a little bit tomorrow for the new moon study, but one of the lessons is that all we really have to do is allow them to take off our filthy garments and to wash us and to put new garments on us. That's all Aaron and his sons had to do. That's all Joshua and the men wondered at who stood before him had to do. You know, just not fight. Aaron and his sons were not to put on their own garments. Moses put the garments onto them. The angel of the Lord put the garments onto Joshua. You know, it's really not our work. We just have to consent to it. That is our work, consenting to it. And that consent, again, in one sense, I'm saying it's our work because it's a choice that we have to make. It's not something that you passively do. But in another sense, it's not our work because all it is just consenting, right? It's obeying from the heart that form of doctrine which was delivered to you, right? So the form of doctrine which is being delivered to each of you now is consent. Be willing Let God be true and every man a liar. Receive these garments of righteousness. Be willing to give up all. Change your way of thinking. No longer think in the ways that you thought in the past. You know? Accept the truth wholly as it is. Believe inspiration and follow inspiration, as we all must do. And if we do that, that's obeying from the heart that form of doctrine which is given to us. You know? Being willing. It's being willing. And then our heavenly family will be able to bless us with a change of apparel. And with that change of apparel, they will be able to instruct us in the 7 days of the messages of righteousness, the 7 angels' messages, and they will show us the ways of the sanctuary. And we will be able to guide other individuals to bring their sacrifice, to give up all. That's really where it's at. So there's, all these different lessons that we can learn from our history. There's lessons that are in relation to our personal experience. There's instruction in relation to the movement. Victor Houteff setting up Mount Carmel Center and everything that went on there is instructive for us. Because Mount Carmel Center was supposed to be the place from which the 9T Reformation took place. It was supposed to be happening in Victor Houteff's day, and it almost begun. It almost did in the 1950s, in the beginning, the hunting campaign. It was really happening. Not the 9T Reformation, but the movement that they were doing was really happening in the sense that they were very active. And if they had accepted the branch message, it could have easily begun right then, right there, the 9T Reformation, full swing, But unfortunately, that's not what happened, So here we are today. I want to mention a few other things about this branch history in relation to today specifically. When the branch message first came and the Davidians rejected it, and Florence Houteff had usurped the leadership of the organization, and the executive council under her started to, under her guidance, make very foolish decisions and really just do things based off of greed and pride and self. They finished selling off Old Mount Carmel Center. They purchased New Mount Carmel Center. The Rodins were located in Odessa, Texas, and were doing the work of the branch from there. And then, after the Davidian organization folded, that being Florence Houteff's pseudo-Davidian organization, there was a whole 1959 failed prediction of Florence Houteff and everything that went on there. And then by 1962, the Florence Houteff and the others with her gave up the rod message, renounced it and folded up the organization. And actually that was 1960 that took place, if I'm remembering correctly. 1962, the end of 1961, I think, and then into 1962 is when you had other Davidians coming together and trying to form their own organizations. And basically, in the 60s there, that's when the Rodins were able to get New Mount Carmel Center back. And I do not know how active New Mount Carmel Center was under the Rodins at its most active, but they held feasts there, and other branches kept feasts in their own respective areas as well. But they held feasts, and they had people come there to learn the message, and they did publishing from there, and they were running a real operation. And they had agriculture, and they had a rest home, and all these other things that the Davidian organization was supposed to have. And then, as you know, after Ben died, confusion really started to come in. And early in, even still in the 70s, in the late 70s, George Roden was already trying to sell off a lot of the possessions of the branch, a lot of branch properties and so on like that. And really, things were being torn apart, and then Vernon Howell came in contact with the branch in 1981, and everything started to really fall apart. And, of course, Lois died in 1986, and you guys know the story of what happened with Doug since then. And so, really, since the 80s, there hasn't really been a place where the branch work has been going on very efficiently, 1983 is when Vernon Howell burnt down the publishing house. And that, along with the other things that Vernon Howell was used by the devil to do, have, worked their detrimental effects on the branch movement to such an extent that we are still not yet recovered from what took place. But now we're at the place where our Heavenly Family is, within this next while, providing us with a place to carry on the work from. A place that can be headquarters, a place that we can have a ministerial school. We can have a grade school for branch children. We can have agriculture. We can have all the things that Mount Carmel Center was, and so much more. So it's really coming to the point now in the history of this movement where there is greater potential than ever before for the name of the branch to be vindicated. And it will all depend on how we conduct ourselves. It depends on what we as individuals choose. When thinking back to 1981 was when Lois Roden instituted the Lord's Supper and the foot washing every day at Mount Carmel Center. And the branches at that time probably did not think that how, just think of just being one person, and you're there, you're part of this branch movement, and you believe it's present truth, but it's kind of small. It's not a huge, well-known thing in the world, even though, hey, it's starting to be, because Lois Roden was, starting to travel all around the world, teaching the Holy Spirit feminine, getting radio interviews, television interviews, and awards from religious organizations and all that. So it was starting to become known. And they're there, and, each person just thinks, oh, well, I'm just one person, And so when they were called to enter into this thorough self-examination, they didn't think that their own decision or lack thereof would have such detrimental effects as it had. Because 1981, the branch had such an opportunity they could have received the message of justification by faith in 1981. That was a time when the Spirit was really trying to put before them to see their true condition and to experience the new life of the new covenant in His blood, which is righteousness, being born again. And they failed to do it. It was a work which they neglected, the work of self-examination. And because of that, they became even more settled in the dryness of their bones. And that is what enabled them to be deceived by Vernon Howell and Charles Pace and these different individuals who have played their own roles in blackening the name of the branch. And so this whole thing with David Koresh in 1993 would not have happened if the branches in 1981 had simply listened to the voice of inspiration and thoroughly examined themselves to see where they are, to find out that they aren't true branches, to find out that they have failed in this so-called Christian life, to find out that they have no righteousness, that they are not clothed with the garments of Christ's righteousness. If they had done that and found that out, they would have had the greatest opportunity to receive Christ's righteousness. And this whole thing with David Koresh could have been avoided. Now, here we are today, the day where the name of the branch is supposed to be vindicated. And here you are, as the one single individual of yourself. And you may think that your individual decision does not make much of a difference, but it really does. What you choose will be your life and prosperity, and the life and prosperity of the movement, or your degradation and death, and the degradation and death of the movement, potentially. We need to know that that's a real possibility. It is a real possibility. And it comes down to how you as an individual decide how to, what will you choose? Will you choose life or will you choose death? And the possible effects of this are so great. If you guys think back to, I just want to give you a couple examples of how our decisions make a difference in life, because this is one of the biggest deceptions of the devil, to get us to think that our decisions do not make a difference. So here's a decision that made a difference. You guys are probably, everyone here has probably read the issue of the Silver Trumpet, not the last one, but the one before. I think it was the second issue, where Teresa had her testimony of receiving rebuke from the Spirit through Doug. And it would have been very easy for her to say, oh, no, Doug is just excusing himself and he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just, saying things in the wrong way, and he's just, going about it.
He's misjudging me.
Yeah, he's misjudging me. She could easily have done that. But instead, she decided, you know what? If this message is true, if this is present truth, and Doug is the messenger of our Heavenly Family, And he's giving me this message of rebuke. Our Heavenly Family knows me better than I know myself. Therefore, I must heed it. And she did. At the time, that did not seem like a life-changing, huge decision to her. There's no way that she could have perceived the effects and the outcome of that decision one way or the other. But I can tell you for sure that if, when that rebuke came to her through Doug, if she had chosen to not heed it, to not say, okay, you know what, I'm not going to view this as being misjudged, but I'm going to view this as it is in truth. The Spirit giving a message through Doug for me, for my benefit. If she did not choose to go about it that way, but chose to say, oh, no, I'm being misjudged, I know my intentions, I know what I meant, I know how the reasons for me doing what I do and all this, if she had said that, and if she had maintained that, she would not believe the branch right now. She would not be here in Canada with me right now. We would not be married. She, who knows what my circumstance would be right now too, because Teresa has been very instrumental, as you guys know, in my life, and she was used very greatly to show me the calling that I've been given by the dream that she had with the 3 women. You know, that's just one aspect, but just to give an obvious example. And so look how much that decision changes things. Her life would be so dramatically different right now, you know, and I can see the same thing for me as well, looking back at various points where I had to make a decision on something. And at the time, I did not perceive that something would be one way or the other. Or I did not perceive that the outcome of this would lead down this road, and if I choose the other way, it'll lead down this road. I did not know. I just knew that I had a decision before me and that I wanted to choose the right thing. And I'm sure you can think back in your life and see many circumstances like that. But I know for me, there have, been many times, like, me becoming a Davidian ultimately just came down to a particular decision that I had to make at a particular time. How was I going to view something? At one point, I believed that Ellen White was a false prophet. When I heard about this rod message thing, the thought had entered my mind to not give it a chance because, they believe Ellen White and she's a false prophet. And if I had simply decided that it's not worth my time, that to me would have seemed like a very insignificant decision. Because it's probably not true anyways. Whatever, they believe Ellen White, she's a false prophet, I already know that. And if I had just decided that I wasn't going to give it that time, then I would not be a Davidian today. I would have been, whether I would have still been a Christian or whatever, I don't know. I really don't. I have no way of knowing where I would be today, At one point, I had my friend Robert call me the other day, and, seeing where he is in life, seeing where I am in life, and, our other friends that we went to high school with, and, thinking back on if we had made certain decisions when we were in high school to go down a certain road and acquire certain information and certain knowledge, we could be in dramatically different places. I may have never gotten out of doing drugs and playing music, But it comes down to a decision, So each of you right now are at a place of decision, whether you realize it or not. And doing nothing is as much a decision as doing something. And that's a very important thing to realize, you know. No matter what you do at this point, it is a decision, because you have been, you are now being made aware of the fact that you are at a point of decision. And this point of decision that you're at has been the discussion of the Silver Trumpet. And so I want to encourage you guys to go back and read each issue again. And as we go through this next one tomorrow, you'll see the choice before you yet again. And our Heavenly Family, what they're doing here, just to state it plainly, is that they are putting this same decision before you in many different lights. They're putting it before you in the light of the sanctuary. They're putting it before you in the light of the Silver Trumpet. They're putting it before you in the light of the consecration of the priesthood. Tomorrow they're going to be putting it before you in the light specifically of the priestly garments. Tonight they're putting it before you in the light of Davidian history and the various principles that we can learn from different aspects of this history. And they're putting it before you by plainly stating it as well. So, you know, right now, this is what we need to be aware of. And I want each of you as individuals to realize that your decision does matter, and that your decision directly affects and impacts my life, and that it directly affects and impacts Teresa's life, and each other person on this call. Your decision affects all their lives, and your own, and the outcome of this movement, you know?
People are used to being in a position where they feel like they matter, you know?
It's true.
We're used to just existing on this planet, and, you know, we may not hold a position of much import in our job or in our community or anything like that, and it's very easy to settle in to this quiet, comfortable kind of inobtrusive existence of, well, you know, I don't really make an impact on my community or my society necessarily. But that's just another aspect that the devil can use to keep a person really lukewarm.
Exactly. That's what I was just thinking of. Just how it's truly people, when they don't think they're making a difference, they're put into a comfortable place. The devil just wants to get them to a place where they're comfortable not making a difference, comfortable just sitting there and doing whatever, you know? And if it makes you a little bit uncomfortable to know that your decision dramatically affects this movement, then all praise to our Heavenly Family, you know? It's better. It's actually better to be right there, you know? If you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable right now, thinking like, oh, man, you know, what I do really does make a difference, man, praise our Heavenly Family, because you know what? The reason why they're letting you know is because they have right here before you the strength and the willpower and the life and the encouragement and everything you need in order to not only make the right decision, but to carry it out and to never fall in carrying it out. They can do this, and they are doing it with anyone and everyone who is willing, and there are not many who are willing, unfortunately. But if you are willing, then your life will be dramatically different from what you've experienced up till you're becoming willing. So,
and it'll be so much better.
It will be so much better. So much better. That's some of these things. If tomorrow you think back, as we're going through the priestly garments, you think back to this conversation tonight, you'll be able to connect some of the principles between the two discussions. But, you know, that's what should really be emphasized to you right now, you know. understand that your decision really does matter, and you can do so much good. I have seen how the people who are in this movement have the skills and the talent and the knowledge which our Heavenly Family needs right now.
Mm-hmm.
If you are hearing this message, you have talents and skills and knowledge which our Heavenly Family wants to see used and wants to allow you, or they want you to allow them to use you with these different talents and with the knowledge that they've given you for the sake of their work. You know, you all have these different talents and knowledge, and some of you, I know at least what some of them are, and I know specifically how they can be put to use, and that's a wonderful thing. And others of you may not have discovered what your talents really are and what your knowledge really is that can be contributed. But rest assured, it is there, truly. And I'm happy about that. I'm excited about that because I know that as much as it is a very real possibility, and it would break my heart to see each of you just decide to be inactive and to, not receive this change of garment, it would really be a terrible thing. But it is realistically possible that each one here could choose to do that. But I don't believe that that's going to happen. I really do not believe that that is going to happen. And I hope that you guys don't believe that that's going to happen. And you know what? One thing that I have to say, if any of you is being tempted into thinking that you will not choose the right, destroy that thought in your mind. Recognize it as what it is. It is a lie of the devil. And it is only true if you make it true. That deception, that lie, to think that you will not choose the good, can only be true if you choose it to be true. You see that? So the devil isn't actually telling you something that's true. The devil is telling you a lie, hoping that you'll believe it and that you will then make it true. It's not substance until you make it substance. So refuse it. If the devil says to you, you are a Saul, say, no, I'm a David. If the devil says to you, you are the other, or actually, I'll put it like this. If he says to you, you're Judas, tell him, no, you are the other Saul. The one who we typically call Paul. Or you are Peter. Yes, you have denied the Lord, but he will forgive you, and he has forgiven you, and you accept his righteousness. Truly believe it. Don't look at yourself as one who is dead in trespasses and sins to just remain there forever. If you view yourself as the dry bone of the valley, then you have resurrection. That's what it is. If you really view yourself as the dry bone in the valley, then you know and you can have rest assured that the resurrection is here for you. So anyways, even though we ended up kind of not going through a big overview of Davidian history, we've gone over an overview of some of its aspects and focused on some particulars. And I know that the lessons which our Heavenly Family has given to us at this time are important and are what we need to hear. So I just hope and pray that you guys are hearing what's being said and that you guys take it to heart. So, what do you guys say? We're going to choose the good, right?
Amen.
Amen. Good.
Well, I'm glad that Glenn gave the information that I need to learn the history of the branch and the rod, because I certainly do. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, and you know, we'll hopefully at one of these other points we can kind of go through an overview of the history in a more concise way, and that will be helpful. And go ahead, Teresa.
Well, this isn't all-inclusive or anything, but I'm just wondering if maybe my dad has been able to get a copy of some audio CDs to you, some of which cover the study given this spring in Ontario on Ezekiel 16. And it's several hours. It's like 4 discs long. And it does cover some aspects of the Davidian history, but from the perspective of the prophecy of Ezekiel 16. But very good. I mean, I think, you know, that's as good a place to start as any, especially since it's given in the light of present truth.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't have those already, somebody in Missouri, you know, be sure and mail or get them to her somehow, those discs. And if you do have them, then that might be a good place to start.
No, I don't have the discs from you all. I have some discs from a place in Ohio, but not the ones that you all have been compiling yourself.
Okay, well, I will try to, whoever's listening, Mom or Dad or whoever, let's get some copies burned and mailed out of those CDs that Rebecca burned the masters off of. Let's get those CDs sent out to Carolyn right away, if possible.
I know the third part of your mother, but I have that one, but that's the only one that I do have.
I see. Okay, yeah, we've got several more that we need to get to you then.
Yeah, definitely the ones on Ezekiel 16 will be really good. And, yeah, it will help you with the history. The history of it isn't the primary focus, as Teresa was stating, but it is definitely a good place to start, and it'll give you an overview and seeing the Advent movement, the Davidian movement, and the branch movement in prophecy.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, well, is there anything else that anyone had to say, or shall we just close off? I'll take that as we'll just close off.
I need to get busy and write you something tonight, Bill, so...
Wonderful. And was someone else going to say something too?
Yes, Leroy, I was thinking it'd be nice to talk about just what caused the Seventh-day Adventists, say, to reject the rod message when it came, and what's causing the rod people to reject the branch message when it comes. Is it compromising? Start doing a compromise, and then once you compromise it, the devil can get you to compromise more and more.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a huge part of it, right? Compromising the principles that were laid down in the prior messages. I mean, you know, reading through the testimonies with Ellen White, you can see that very early on, even before James White passed away and all that, I mean, Battle Creek, the leaders there were working against her. And she wrote about it openly way before 1888 and all of that. And they had compromised on the principle of believing inspiration. And, here they were proclaiming to have the spirit of prophecy in their midst, and yet not following it. And then after Ellen White died, they very quickly, changed their doctrine on what the spirit of prophecy even is. And then by the time Victor Houteff came around, they just weren't even willing to consider it, because to them, Ellen White was the last prophet. And same thing happened in the Davidian movement. They compromised on the principles of truth. And that has been the case even before Adventism. Going back, why did the Pharisees reject Christ?
Same
why
reason.
did the Pharisees? Yeah, exactly. They had, and Josephus, the first century historian, actually records this, that the Pharisees believed that prophecy had ceased. And, so therefore anyone comes proclaiming to have a message from our heavenly family must automatically be a false prophet, And, so, this whole thing, and that's just one example, although it's a pivotal one, more pivotal than any other, what someone believes about the spirit of prophecy. But compromising on that truth is largely responsible for the rejection of each message, specifically on the issue of what is the spirit of prophecy. However, it's by no means limited to that issue. If, the Rod message came with a message of reproof, which addressed specifically the compromises that the Adventist Church had taken on things like health reform and dress reform and all these other things, and just the council, their rejection of the council through Ellen White. And they had compromised on all these things, and because of their pride in being unwilling to receive the reproof that was sent through Victor Houteff, they also rejected that, So compromise is actually a good way to put that, Leroy.
I met a man that his grandfather went over to Australia with Sister White as her financial advisor. His name was Palmer was the last name. But anyway, he wasn't in the General Conference, but all of his family had been, and told me all kinds of stories about the General Conference. One was that a lot of them, or most of them, higher up are meat eaters. So once you compromise on your diet, and your brain and your stomach are closely allied, so you're cutting your throat that way too.
Very, very true. Totally. And both my parents were conference workers as well. And, anyone who works in the Adventist conference system for very long will very quickly find out that it's corrupt. And, it's just people who are in it are not consecrated, and don't really believe the Advent message, many even, I don't even necessarily study it. Teachers in Adventist schools, many of them, really, aren't able to teach the Advent message, aren't really aware of the aspects of the Advent message. And it's just, you think about it, it's supposed to be a religious organization to preach the three angels' messages, and then you have people who are employed by the organization who don't know how to do the very thing for which the organization is set up. And, so it's very, very much backslidden, and that's the condition of Davidia today as well, unfortunately.
So when a spiritual person comes along with a message, it don't fit their calling for change.
Very true.
That man said that they would, when they were going to hire somebody, they would take him out to lunch, and if he ordered vegetarian, so much for him. That man's passed away now. That man passed away not too long ago. He was a really very nice man. I tried to share the I think I was a rod believer then with him, but he had his own ideas how he thought the problem was going to get solved.
Right. Yeah, see, that's, the principles are so important, because if we operate by correct principles, then we will not be led astray. That's really it. I mean, when it comes to someone who rejects a message of present truth, every time it comes down to the fact that they were not abiding by the principles of truth. And that's really it. So, as we continue on in all of these different studies, whether weekly, monthly, festal, on whatever topics, whether it's new topics of freshly revealed truth, or whether it's going back over the truth of the past in the light of present truth, there's just so much for us to learn, and going over it again and again is going to help us to have these principles really settled into us. So, a lot to look forward to in this life.
Amen.
Amen. So let's thank our Heavenly Family, and then if anyone else has anything to say before we close off, feel free. But let's thank our Heavenly Family now, and then we'll bring an end to the meeting. Heavenly Family, thank you for your love. Thank you so much for continuing to speak to us and for guiding us and bringing us to this point in the history of this movement where we have a fresh opportunity for your name to be vindicated. Heavenly Family, this is not for our own sakes, but it's for your holy name's sake. Mm-hmm. And we really want to see this happen. We know it's also for the sake of all the lost, dying souls in the world, and they are your purchased possession, brother. You have shed your blood for us all, and we no longer want to see you robbed of your possession by this enemy who has set himself against you for so long now. Heavenly Family, let it all be done, please. We really want to embrace your truth in fullness, and I want to ask that you impress these things upon the hearts of every branch candidate, and have them really break down the barrier of communication between them and you. Please enable them to talk to you freely, Heavenly Family, and to have the dead formalism that so often controls humanity just be put away once and for all. Please, Heavenly Family, we just want to ask before the Heavenly Council that this be done, and that the blood of your Son, Father and Mother, which you sent, is the greatest witness that the universe could ever hope for, or ask for, or need. That you do have the right to do everything with us, and that even though the wicked gods are ruling this world, you really are the ruler of all. So thank you so much, Father, Mother. It's in the name of your Son and daughter, Branch, that we ask these things, to their glory and to yours. Mm-hmm. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Well, I'm really glad that you guys were all able to be on tonight and that we were able to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, we missed you guys last night.
Yeah.
We missed you.
Aw.
Amen.
All right. Well, yeah, I'm glad that we're going to be on again tomorrow and we can go through the subject of the priestly garments. And the article on it, just so you guys know, is not completed yet. But we'll be going through the first part, and hopefully the rest will be done really soon, and you guys will be able to read it.
I was reading Revelation, and it seems that Jesus in the Revelation is wearing the same garments as Aaron. And
very interesting. Yeah, I'll have to check that out in Revelation 1, right?
Just Revelation period. You know, he's
okay.
Sound like he's wearing the same type of garments or same garments.
He is our great high priest.
Yeah.
Amen.
It didn't really stop. It just changed from a earthly priest to a heavenly priest, continuing on. Nothing ceased except the animal sacrifice.
Amen. Amen. You know, totally. And that's, I know others have brought it up in the past, and Rebecca sent us an email about it today too, asking about something about the feasts. You know, something good. You know, what's a good track to give people? And I think most of the literature that we have explaining the perpetuity of the feast days is written for Adventists and Davidians. I don't even know if we have in branch literature one thing that is specifically intended to give to everyone. You know, so at some point that'll be another thing, and that's right there, Leroy. What you're saying is the key to it all, right? Showing how it's really the transferal of the system from the earthly to the heavenly.
Yeah, from a Levite to a Melchizedek.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. So, man, I'm looking forward to understanding these truths better and better. The ceremonial service is so important.
Yeah. They've always been kind of a fog to me. I could not. Oh, I think my computer just ran out of time.
Okay, well, we can still hear you.
Okay,
so that's good.
It just seemed like something stopped. Anyway, it's telling me you left less than 5 minutes left for this call. Your credit is running low. I'm on Skype.
Okay, well, we'll close off anyways then. Man, I hope we can find out a way for you to be on tomorrow.
I'll use the telephone tomorrow.
Okay, good. All right, well, have a good night. See you all then, and love you guys, and look forward to talking to you guys tomorrow.
Amen.
Good night. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.